They handed my twin sister an envelope at her wedding reception. I watched from across the dance floor as she opened it, her face lighting up like someone had just told her she'd won the lottery. She actually screamed, jumped up and down in her white dress, mascara running from happy tears. My parents hugged her, all three of them crying together in this perfect little bubble of joy. I found out later what was in that envelope. $30,000. Cash. A down payment on a house, they said. A fresh start for her new life. At my wedding, 6 months earlier, they'd handed me an envelope too. I remember the weight of it, how light it felt in my hands. Inside was a card, handwritten. "Congrats on your big day. We love you." That was it. No check, no cash. Just 12 words in my mother's neat cursive and both their signatures at the bottom. I stood there in my wedding dress, holding that card, and smiled, because that's what you do when people are watching. You smile and you say thank you and you pretend your heart isn't breaking into 1,000 pieces. But let me back up, because if you're going to understand what happened next, you need to understand what it means to be a twin in a family where only one of you is actually seen. Have you ever looked in a mirror and realized the reflection looking back wasn't quite you? That's what my entire childhood felt like. My twin sister Claire and I, born 3 minutes apart, identical DNA, identical faces. But somehow, in our parents' eyes, we were never equal. When we were 5 years old, both of us wanted to take ballet. Mom enrolled Claire immediately. Pink tutu, tiny ballet shoes, Saturday morning classes that Dad would videotape like she was performing at Lincoln Center. When I asked about ballet, Mom said, "We can't afford 2 sets of lessons, sweetie. Maybe next year." Next year never came. Instead, I stayed home while they drove Claire to class, learning early that wanting things was dangerous, that asking for things meant hearing no while watching your identical twin sister get yes. At 7, we both brought home report cards. Straight A's for Claire, straight A's for me. My parents took Claire out for ice cream to celebrate. They told me to put my report card on the fridge with a magnet. When I asked why Claire got ice cream and I didn't, Dad said, "You're both doing great, but Claire's been working really hard lately. She deserves a treat." I remember standing in the kitchen staring at my report card held up by a magnet shaped like a strawberry, wondering what I'd done wrong. Wondering why working hard only counted when Claire did it. By the time we hit middle school, the pattern was set in stone and I'd stopped fighting it. Claire was the outgoing one, the bubbly one, the one teachers remembered. I was the quiet one, the serious one, the one people had to be reminded was also in the class. When Claire made the cheerleading squad, Mom bought her new outfits and drove her to every game. When I made the honor roll 3 years in a row, I got a, "That's nice, honey," without them looking up from their phones. High school brought boyfriends. Claire's first boyfriend was this event. Mom helped her pick out outfits for dates. Dad gave her curfew extensions and gas money. When I started dating someone, they barely acknowledged it. No questions about where we were going. No meeting him at the door. It was like I was invisible unless I was standing next to Claire, and even then, I was just the shadow that proved she was the light. College applications came senior year. Both of us applied to the same schools. Claire got into a decent state university with mediocre SAT scores and a lot of extracurricular padding. I got into a better school with a partial academic scholarship and 4 years of perfect attendance. The night Claire's acceptance letter came, my parents opened champagne. They posted on social media with photos of her holding the letter, crying happy tears. When my acceptance came 2 days later with scholarship news, Mom said, "Oh, that's wonderful, honey," and went back to scrolling through Claire's Instagram likes. But here's what really broke something in me. When it came time to pay for college, they sat us both down. "We'll cover Claire's tuition. Dad said. But honey, he looked at me, you got that scholarship, so you should be fine, right? Plus, you're more independent. You'll figure it out. I figured it out. I worked 2 campus jobs. I took out loans. I ate ramen while Claire posted pictures of herself at restaurants with friends, funded by the generous allowance our parents gave her. When I came home for Thanksgiving my sophomore year, exhausted and thin, Mom said, "You look tired. Maybe you should manage your time better." Claire laughed and said, "Some of us are just better at handling stress." After college, we both moved to the same city. Claire worked in marketing, a job Dad helped her get through a friend. I worked in finance, a job I'd gotten through 3 rounds of interviews and a project presentation. Claire lived in a nice apartment downtown that our parents helped her furnish. I lived in a studio with secondhand furniture and neighbors who fought at 3 a.m. When I got promoted 2 years in, I called to tell them. Mom said, "That's great, sweetie. Did you hear Claire might be getting promoted too? She's waiting to hear back." I hadn't called them for anything after that. Then I met James. He was different from anyone I'd ever dated. He saw me. Not as Claire's twin, not as the quiet one, just as myself. He asked about my day and actually listened. He remembered details. He made me feel like I mattered. When he proposed after 2 years, I cried for an hour. Not just because I loved him, but because for the first time in my life, I was someone's first choice. Planning the wedding was surreal. I kept it small, intimate, because I knew my parents wouldn't contribute much anyway. James and I paid for everything ourselves. The venue, the catering, the flowers, my dress. I didn't ask them for money because I'd learned that lesson years ago. Asking meant hearing about budgets and how things were tight, followed by watching them drop thousands on Claire's latest whim. They came to my wedding. They sat in the second row, not the first, because Claire wanted to sit up front with her boyfriend. They smiled during the ceremony. They hugged me afterward. And then they handed me that card. That goddamn handwritten card that probably cost $3 at CVS. I opened it during the reception while James was talking to his college friends. I read those 12 words. I felt my hands start to shake, so I put the card in my purse and went to the bathroom. I stared at myself in the mirror, in my wedding dress that I'd saved for months to afford, and I thought, this is it. This is all you get. This is all you'll ever get from them. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? They'd made their choice 30 years ago when Claire came out 3 minutes before me, and apparently those 3 minutes meant everything. I danced with James. I cut the cake. I thanked everyone for coming. And when people asked if my parents had helped with the wedding, I smiled and said, "We wanted to do it ourselves." That was easier than saying they'd given me a card. 6 months later, Claire got engaged. The announcement on social media had 600 likes in an hour. Mom called me crying happy tears. "Your sister's getting married, isn't it wonderful?" I said it was wonderful. I meant it. I loved my sister, even if she'd been the favorite our entire lives. That wasn't her fault. She didn't ask to be loved more. She just was. But then came her wedding. The planning was this massive production. Mom and Claire talked on the phone every day, sometimes twice a day. Mom flew out to help pick the dress, the venue, the flowers. Dad paid for everything without blinking. When I asked how much they were spending, Mom said, "We have some savings we've been setting aside for Claire's wedding." I didn't ask why there hadn't been savings for mine. I already knew the answer. The wedding was beautiful. I'll give her that. Claire looked stunning. The venue was this gorgeous estate with gardens and string lights. Everything was perfect. During the reception, I stood by the bar, watching the same parents who'd given me a card at my wedding now paying for a band, an open bar, and a multi-tier cake that probably cost more than my entire wedding budget. That's when they gave Claire the envelope. I watched it happen. Watched them pull her aside, both of them looking so proud. Watched her open it and scream. I saw other guests turn to look, confused. Someone asked me, "What's going on?" I said, "I think they gave her money." What I didn't say was how much. What I didn't say was that at my wedding 6 months ago, I'd gotten a card. I found out the amount later that night. Claire, drunk and happy, pulled me aside. "Oh my God, they gave us $30,000. Can you believe it? Mom said it's for a down payment on a house. We're going to start looking next month." She hugged me, completely oblivious to the fact that her wedding gift could have paid off my student loans. All of them, with money left over. I hugged her back. I said congratulations. I went home that night and sat in my studio apartment with my husband, and I told him everything. The card, the 30,000, the lifetime of being second. He was furious. He wanted to call them. I stopped him. What would be the point? They'd just deny it or make excuses or tell me I was being dramatic. So instead, I made a different decision. I opened my laptop and created a new document. I titled it simply, Documentation. Then I started writing. Every memory, every moment of favoritism, every gift they'd given Claire that they hadn't given me, every time they'd said they couldn't afford something for me while paying for Claire's wants. I wrote for 3 hours. By the time I was done, I had 12 pages single-spaced, a lifetime of inequality documented in Arial 12-point font. Then I looked at my bank statements. Every wedding gift James and I had received I'd carefully recorded. My parents' contribution was clear. $0, 1 card. I screenshot everything. I went through old photos, finding the ones that told the story. Claire's cheerleading uniforms versus my honor roll certificate stuck to the fridge. Claire's college graduation with both parents in attendance versus mine, where they'd left early because Claire had a doctor's appointment. Claire's engagement party that they'd hosted versus my engagement where we'd had drinks at a bar. I spent the entire next day organizing it all, creating a timeline, making it undeniable. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because I needed to see it. Needed proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't ungrateful, wasn't imagining 30 years of being second best to my identical twin. When I was done, I sat back and stared at the document. 30 years of favoritism, quantified and organized. And then I did something I'd never done before. I sent it to Claire. No message, no explanation, just the attachment. Subject line: what it's like to be your twin. She called me within an hour. Her voice was shaking. "What is this?" I could hear she'd been crying. "It's the truth," I said. "It's everything you never noticed because you were too busy being the favorite." "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know it was like this." "How could you not know?" I asked, and I wasn't angry. I was just tired. "How could you not see it?" She didn't have an answer. She cried. She apologized. She said she'd always thought our parents loved us equally, that maybe they just expressed it differently. I told her that love expressed only for one child isn't love expressed differently. It's love given to one and withheld from the other. We hung up after an hour. I don't know if she understood. I don't know if she could understand when she'd been the chosen one her entire life. Then I called my parents, both of them on speaker. It was a Sunday afternoon. They answered cheerful, unsuspecting. "Honey, how are you? Wasn't Claire's wedding beautiful?" "It was," I said. "I'm calling about the envelope you gave her." "Oh, yes." Mom's voice brightened. We'd been saving for her wedding gift. We wanted to really help her and Mark get started. "You gave her $30,000, I said. Silence. At my wedding, you gave me a card. More silence. A handwritten card. No money. No gift. Just a card. Well, Dad started, his voice defensive. Your situation was different. You had James's income. Claire needed— Don't, I interrupted. Don't make excuses. I sent Claire a document. Every time you chose her over me. Every gift. Every moment. 30 years of it. Read it. Then call me back if you want to apologize. But I'm not holding my breath. I hung up before they could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From liberation. From finally saying what I'd swallowed for 3 decades. They called back 3 hours later. Mom was crying. We never meant to make you feel that way. But you did, I said. For 30 years. We thought you were fine, Dad said. You were always so independent. You never seemed to need us like Claire did. I didn't need you because you made it clear my needs didn't matter, I said. I learned to stop asking, because asking meant watching Claire get what I couldn't have. You taught me that. The call lasted 2 hours. They made excuses. They cried. They said they'd try to do better. But nowhere in that conversation did they say the words I needed to hear. We're sorry. We were wrong. We'll make this right. Instead, I got justifications and explanations and promises that felt hollow. When we hung up, I told James I needed space from them. Real space. No Sunday calls, no holiday obligations, no pretending we were a normal family. He supported it completely. You deserve better, he said. You've always deserved better. I didn't go to Thanksgiving that year. I didn't go to Christmas. When they texted asking why, I sent one message. I need time to figure out if I want a relationship with people who gave my twin sister $30,000 and gave me a card. They stopped texting after that. Claire and I talked occasionally. She'd started seeing a therapist. She told me she'd confronted them too, told them what I'd documented was real, and she'd witnessed a lot of it without understanding what it meant. I benefited from it, she said one night over the phone. I can't undo that. But I see it now. I see what they did to you. To us. It wasn't forgiveness between us, but it was understanding. And for twins who'd spent their whole lives on opposite sides of our parents' love, understanding felt like progress. In March, 6 months after Claire's wedding, I got a letter in the mail. From my parents. Handwritten. 5 pages. They'd listed moments. Specific ones. Times they'd chosen Claire over me. Some I'd documented. Some I'd forgotten. Some I'd never known they remembered. The letter ended with, "We can't give you back those years. We can't undo the hurt, but we're depositing $30,000 into your account. Not because it fixes anything, but because you deserved it then, and you deserve it now. We're sorry. We were wrong. We want to do better." I called my bank the next day. The money was there. $30,000. The exact amount they'd given Claire. I stared at the balance on my screen for a long time. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like payment for 30 years of being invisible. Like they were trying to buy their way out of guilt. I called them. "I got the money," I said. "Thank you," Mom said quietly. "We should have done it earlier. You should have seen me," I said. "That's what you should have done. Seen me as much as you saw Claire." "We know," Dad said. "We know that now. We're rebuilding. Slowly. It's awkward. They're trying, genuinely trying, to treat us equally now. To remember my birthday without prompting. To ask about my life without immediately pivoting to Claire. To see me as separate from my twin, as my own person with my own value. Some days I believe they can change. Some days I think 30 years of favoritism can't be undone with a bank transfer and good intentions. Claire and I are closer now in a strange way. We talk about what it was like, growing up as mirror images with completely different childhoods. She's working through her guilt. I'm working through my anger. We're both learning that being twins doesn't mean being the same, and that being treated differently broke both of us, just in different ways. The money sits in a savings account. James and I haven't touched it. Part of me wants to use it, to let it be what they said it was, a fresh start. Part of me wants to send it back, to prove I don't need their guilt money to be whole. Mostly I just look at it sometimes and think about the card, that handwritten card at my wedding. And I think about how much pain could have been prevented if they'd just loved us the same from the start. If you've ever been the invisible twin, the forgotten child, the one who learned to stop asking because asking hurt too much, this story is for you. Sometimes the most painful inequality comes from the people who are supposed to love you equally. Sometimes being identical on the outside means nothing when you're treated as lesser on the inside. And sometimes the only way to heal is to stop waiting for them to see you and start seeing yourself. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been compared to a sibling and come up short? Have you ever had to quantify your pain just to prove it was real? I read every story you share. You're not alone in this. And if you want more stories about finding your worth in families that couldn't see it, subscribe, because there's always another invisible child learning to become visible, another person choosing themselves after a lifetime of coming second.